Hello, friends. Welcome to Take Two for this Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023. I'm Jeannie. I'm so glad you've decided to come along for the ride today. My goodness, we're practically halfway through the month already. Hard to believe, isn't it? Well, last night, Michael and I were watching a movie, a classic film from the 1950s, and it was about a woman who was a criminal. She grew up as a criminal. Her mother was a criminal, and because she was so high risk and from such a bad background, and doomed from the start, if you will, from her childhood, she ended up becoming an undesirable person in the community. She got arrested for a bunch of really stupid crimes like writing bad checks or petty theft, things like that. She was not a person who was known to be a violent person, but unfortunately in the film she sort of gets framed, and the other people who were involved in this crime of theft with her turned on her. They were all men, and they turned on her, and she was the only woman involved in the crime. And she ended up taking the fall and going to her death. She was executed. And after that, there were no more females executed for a very long time after that. If ever again, I don't think that there were in the whatever state she was supposed to be from. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is because it's really, really frustrating for us to be watching the film, because we're behind the scenes, if you will, because it was based on a true story, okay? And us being kind of behind the scenes and watching her get framed the way she was framed, and the others, so that they would take supposed lesser sentences, and some of them got off completely. There was a whole gang of men and her. They all were turning against her and everything. And in the end, for whatever political reasons, or maybe just because the judge deemed it so, the jury deemed it so, she ended up paying the ultimate price with her life. And it was really sad because it was a botched robbery, which ended up that the woman who they were robbing was beaten and killed. And it's just really sad. I mean, it was very gruesome. And again, they didn't show that in the film. They just talked about it. But just to see this frustrated woman, because of her past, it was assumed, well, of course she was in on this. And of course she was the one who ultimately killed the woman they were robbing, etc., etc. And we have to remember sometimes that just because somebody had things in their past, that can't be the sole way that we figure out who they are and that they are guilty of something. Because at the very end of the film, as she's being carted off to her execution, there's a minister or a priest standing there, and she has time with him privately, and you could see that she was very distraught, and she went to him for solace, and she whispered in his ear as she's being carted out, "I didn't do it." And I really believe in real life that this person on whom this story was based did not do it. She was not the one who pulled the trigger or did the beating or what have you. I think she was a criminal. I think she did have a past. But just because of that, that should not have been the basis on which she was tried. But it was almost like the whole system was punishing her because of what she'd done prior to that. We can't do that, boys and girls. We have a tendency sometimes to do the very same thing that judge and jury did. Think about it. If you know people who you know have done stuff in the past that's bad, but something else happens, something goes missing in your house or whatever it might be, we can't automatically say it's got to be that person's fault because they have a past. Now, listen to me carefully. We do have to be wise and monitor things like who our children are hanging around with, or maybe people at work that you know are doing bad things. Be careful to not be involved and get pulled into their schemes or their tricks or their crimes. Be careful of things like that. But on the other hand, just because a crime is committed or some kind of bad thing goes on, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the one who has a past. Always judge each and every circumstance and situation individually. Don't pass sentence on somebody just because they may have done something in their past. Use that information wisely in your mind, but don't automatically convict and call somebody guilty just because they had a past. Because believe it or not, people can change and people can repent and people can amend their ways. So think long and hard before you're ready to point a finger, okay? All right, now listen, go out and be a blessing to somebody today. You may end up being the only one who is. And don't forget now, subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. You can be guilty of that, okay? JeanneSigler. Hit the subscribe button, that notification bell. Every time another Take Two is premiering, you will be notified. Hey, don't forget, every Saturday on UltimateOldiesRadio.com at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, you can tune into Through the Eyes of a New York Woman. That's me. Great music, great fun stuff. I think you'll enjoy it. And then also, don't forget on Sundays, you could hear an encore presentation of that same program on oldie700.com, oldie700.com at 4 Central, 5 Eastern, okay? AM and PM. All right, you be blessed and no finger pointing, okay? Promise, okay? I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.